Sterile Processing Universe, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Clean Mailbag. I'm Adam Okada. I'm here with Hank Balch, Mike Matthews, and Lisa McCown. And we are going to answer some of your questions today. Guys, I got a good one for you. So when instruments are put in the open position for sterilizing, how open would you recommend the instruments be? Depending on the instrument size and the stringer size, the openness can be pretty small. And some people are trying to determine if they should peel back items to the point where the instrument is as open as possible. So, Mike, do you want to start us off? And
Mike, you got to do it first.
Yes. All right. Okay. So, yeah, this is a difficult question, and I tell you, I completely understand. You know, one of my favorite sets to put together when I was a technician was vascular sets. And, you know, vascular sets have a pretty dynamic range of particularly hemostats. They've got everything from the little tiny mosquitoes to the big, heavy DeBakey vascular clamps sometimes. And, you know, the bigger the instrument, the easier it is for that instrument to technically be closed, even if it's on a stringer. And so that does invite a lot of questions about what exactly is open. And I think probably the biggest thing that this is highlighting for us is the fact that we've got a lot of gray area on this, things that we just don't know the right answer to because the data and the science simply hasn't been performed. You know, these are the types of questions that highlight a very serious gap that we have in our industry. Now, I think from a regulatory standpoint, what they really want to see is that it's on a stringer. But we all know that an instrument can be on a stringer and locked at the same time. Mm-hmm. So, yes, great question. The science says...
We're still waiting.
The end. Yeah.
Yeah. So you bring up a couple of good points there, Mike. If you're preparing for Joint Commission, you know, this is not a time that you want to have a philosophical conversation about the science and the standards and everything else. Like, you want some straightforward answers. What do you got to do to not get cited by JCO or by DNV? And the reality is what we see in the industry, 99.9% of the attention that these accreditation agencies are paying to hinged instruments are in pill packs. So you're definitely going to want to get some solution that that manually holds these devices open in your pill pack scenario. That could be an instrument card, that could be a tip protector. I think there's even some other solutions out there today. But you're going to want to make sure that they don't find any devices that appear to be closed and definitely not locked on the ratchet lock. Now, this question, though, kind of comes in at the tray level, and it's a good common sense question, because if we're going to do all that work for pill packs, why are the standards, or why is the expectation different for trays? And, you know, that's a good question, I think, to ask your Joint Commission survey, or if you're feeling a little bit saucy, if you know that you've passed your survey, say, hey, there's a little inconsistency here for how we're applying the expectations or the standards, quote unquote, and the science behind it to what Mike said earlier. Because if we say that it can sterilize devices on stringers and trays that appear to be much closer or almost closed, but they can't do the same thing for pill pack devices, it just doesn't make any scientific sense, doesn't make any common sense, even if it makes the regulator's job a little easier. So yeah, it's another one of these things, a gray area. But I want to encourage folks out there who don't like the gray, that you're not alone. Like when Mike says that we don't have all the answers to that, he's serious. The industry, there's not one person out there who has the solution and the answer to this question. If a surveyor comes in, or if a new manager comes in and acts like they've got it all figured out, I would be wary. And again, ask for questions, and in particular, start asking for data. Can you show me the validation study, for instance, that says that this device can't be sterilized in the closed position, or the studies that say unless it's open at least 1 millimeter, right, and it can't be sterilized? I like to see those studies too, and if you have them, please send them to us at info at beyondclean.net, because we want to read them, because again, it's a gray area all around the industry. There's a lot of claims being made. There's a lot of confusion, but there's not a lot of data being discussed. So Lisa or Adam?
Lisa, you have anything you want to weigh in on?
Yeah.
The only thing is, I agree 100% with what you said. And right now, the language in the standards state that hinged instruments need to be unlatched. So it doesn't say they need to be opened all of the way. And there was some confusion in the interpretation when the language was first revised. There were surveyors who were confused and were citing facilities because they thought that the instruments had to be open all the way. And I actually, one of our sister facilities had to repackage all of their field packs for that purpose. And so really it comes down to being able to, first of all, as a technician, know what the standards are saying now, and then being able to speak to that, because sometimes we do have to, educate the surveyor,
Right.
If that comes up. And then to Hank and Mike's point, we just need more. We need more studies. So,
If you go back to,
And I mean, I think it comes down to also that if you go to the basics of sterile processing and what sterilization is and how you achieve it, it requires contact of all surfaces of the instrument, right? So if an instrument is locked closed, the assumption has always been that the sterilant contact will not hit the jaws, and that's probably the most important place that you're going to want that sterilant contact to occur. And so I think this question really comes down to that sterilant contact.
Right.
But how do we know if that sterilant contact is inside of those DeBakey forceps, for example, that are interlocking jaws? Can the sterilant contact all surfaces within if that device is locked? Or if it's, a mosquito that has interlocking serrations, an Alice clamp that, the jaws have closed on. It's a critical point in the instrument because that's where it's getting used, is that distal end. And yet we don't really know, again, how open it has to be in order for it to sterilant to contact all surfaces within it. So I think it's a very interesting question to
here's what we do know,
pose
though.
to the industry.
Here's what we do know, Adam, and this is what every manufacturer of a validated hinged instrument knows, that sterilant can penetrate that hinge. So let's not even talk about the jaws, right? Like the jaw is the operative area that we're concerned about because, that's doing the surgery. Well, right beside the jaw is the hinge. And unless we're taking all these hinge devices off their hinge and literally sterilizing them in two separate pieces, there will be contact. And that hinge contact is much closer than any kind of contact that would be happening if the jaws just lay closed, or even if you were to lock the jaws. Now, again, I'm not advising that you lock the jaws. But I am saying that for us to assume and believe the validation studies, it says that those box locks can be sterilized without taking them apart. You would assume, and I want to see the data, but you would assume that the same level of penetration that can get in there can get in jaws, even if they were locked. So that's not an answer. That's more of kind of like a little challenge out there, for these validation scientists. But that's where I get hung up, honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it goes to a lot of different instruments. When I've been in sterile processing, I hear a lot of things about, if there's a take apart laparoscopic, shouldn't you take it apart for sterilization? Because then you're definitely getting that sterilant contact with all surfaces. But then, the IFUs actually state that a lot of those take apart laparoscopic can be put together for sterilization. So again, it's assumed that you're going to get that sterilant contact, and the manufacturers have obviously done some type of validation to state that yes, they can be put together and they can be sterilized effectively. I know on certain things like rib spreaders, those are used in emergencies and really should be put together so that they can pop open a chest in an emergency situation. But again, if the assumption in sterile processing is that things have to be taken apart, or it has to be open to all surfaces, Again, it's this conflicting information. I think that's what sterile processing techs have such a hard time with, is we're being told one thing and yet there's this other thing that's also true.
Right.
So
Welcome to our world.
I mean,
you know,
yeah, and I think if we wanted to just have like a open debate where one person takes one side and the other person takes the other side, we'd be here for an hour, and both sides would make a really great point or two, like, and we would be nowhere. And we need, objective scientific research to break that tie. And in a lot of cases, in fact, way too many cases, it just doesn't exist.
very true.
Or we need the cage match scenario, Mike, I think that you brought up in a previous Mailbag episode of let's just fight it out, rather than debate, let's just get the biggest warriors on each side of the equation. And
That's Mike's answer to everything.
It is.
fight.
Listen, history is written by the victors.
So, guys, this is a great question. This is a question that comes up all the time. Hopefully, we provided a little insight in perspective again. I know it's not the black and white answers that folks often look for, but the more you know about the background for how these IFUs are written, how these validation studies are done, how these surveyors are surveying, even to Lisa's point, that there's some confusion many times on the part of the surveyors in interpreting the standards. As all that information is only going to make you a smarter and better sterile processing tech and leader, because you're going to have the information to ask more questions and give more insight and be that subject matter expert that we're all called to be in the industry. So I want to thank the panel for your time and your answers today. I want to thank you for the question out there, for sending that question in to us. And if anyone else out there has another question or topic that you want us to cover on a future Mailbag episode, you can send it to info@beyondclean.net. And until next time, Sterile Processing Universe, keep fighting dirty.